There's a watch brand with a lineup that is packed with iconic designs and crowd favorites. There's a watch brand that sells 5 million watches a year and 50 million movements a year. They have one of the worst bracelets in their price point. They sometimes have shockingly terrible accuracy. Almost every watch has at least one clear weakness. But they grew by 12% in the last year, where almost every Swiss brand reported decline. And people love this brand. How can that possibly be? How come Seiko is so popular? Today, I'm covering Seiko for enthusiasts and newbies alike. What makes them special, how their product lineup is structured, their tiers, their strengths, their weaknesses, what you get and what you don't, and where they are today as a business. Let's dive in. Seiko's history began in 1881 with Kintaro Hattori's Tokyo shop evolving into the Seikosha factory in 1892, making clocks, and then Japan's first wristwatch, the Laurel, in 1913. After rebuilding from the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake, the first Seiko-branded watch launched in 1924. Seiko became a global leader with multiple innovations throughout their history. They were among the pioneers of the development of dive watches in the 1960s. In 1969, they developed the first quartz watch and were accordingly in large part responsible for the quartz crisis that almost destroyed the Swiss watch industry. From an innovation standpoint, they were also the first to develop a titanium dive watch and the first to develop a watch with a ceramic outer case. Solar watches, digital display watches, the spring drive, which merged quartz and mechanical. Seiko has always been at the forefront of innovation. Seiko are also a brand of icons. Rolex has the Submariner, AP has the Royal Oak. Seiko have the Flightmaster, the Orange Monster, the Willard, the Samurai, the Marine Master, the Alpinist, the Tuna, the Arnie, the SKX, the Alien Watch, the 62 MAS. The list of eye-catching, incredibly distinctive, long-lived watches that were not just popular but groundbreaking in terms of designs is seemingly endless. The first thing to understand about Seiko is that they are not a single price point and quality brand. Omega sell watches from around $5,000 up to $100,000, but in large part, there's only one quality of Omega. Every Omega is put together to the same standards regardless of price point. The difference is Omega will sell you the same good watch, but with premium materials like ceramic or gold or platinum. You might also get a more specced out movement with an annual calendar, but you can always be sure that the cheapest Omega has been through the same quality assurance process as the high-end models. And all of Omega's watches are positioned as luxury offerings. Seiko, however, you have 3 distinct tiers. Well, 4 if you count Grand Seiko, but we're going to keep them out of this for now. At the entry level, Seiko has watches that start somewhere around $200, $250 and top out at around $500, $600. This entry level is your over-the-counter Seiko Mall Beta watch. They have sports and dive watches like the SK5s, they have dressier options like the Classiques, and they have sports chronos and field-style watches as well. What these watches have in common is that the movements are base movements. They are either very low-cost quartz movements or the very entry-level, most basic mechanical movements that Seiko make. The mechanical movements are going to have under 40 hours of power reserve. They are not hugely accurate, and although they usually perform within specifications, the performance can vary wildly from watch to watch. The cases are usually consistently finished, but you're not getting a ton of intricate details, not tons of bevels, chamfers, contrasting styles of detailing. These watches are machined with very simple geometries and almost consistently don't have a luxury flair to them. Bracelets can have hollow end links, they are light, and they will have often that jingle jangle to them that you expect, and clasps are usually stamped with rudimentary fold over mechanisms. Dials are going to be pretty enough, but you're not seeing lacquer dials. It's going to be functional, it's going to work, but there's no splurge. With all that said, there are 2 things to keep in mind about this range of watches. They have this simple classic design that stands the test of time, and they are built like tanks. A lot of true mall watches at this price point fall apart if you just look at them. But Seiko still build watches, cases, and movements that can take a beating and keep on ticking. This is their appeal, a solid, good-looking grown-up watch that can take a beating and where you won't cry the second it gets a scratch. From a pure build quality perspective at this price point, Seiko are in no way class leading. I'm unbelievably grateful for the support you guys have shown for my channel. It means so much to me. Now, if you are among those 50% of you that are watching this video and are not subscribed, please consider doing so. I'm really trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. I'm a little bit of a competitive person, so it does mean something to me. So please, if you enjoy my content, click subscribe. Thanks a ton. Next up, the watches are typically branded as the Prospex watches for the sports watches and Presage for the dressier watches. The finishing is going to be elevated, and that's nerdy enthusiast speak for shinier, sharper, and more detailed. Take a Seiko SK5 and put it side by side with pretty much any SPB model, and you'll notice a couple of things. The case on the SK5 has this rounded feel to it, with edges just being a tad soft. If you run your fingers over the edges of an SPB, you can clearly feel the edges and where there's a bevel. The SPB will have areas that are highly polished, and it's a clean and even polish, where the SK5 is almost completely brushed, and even the small amount of polish that there may be is just a little bit flat to the eye. The bezel is going to be stiffer. Across the board, things just take a step up. The internals as well. You go from quartz or 4R movements to 6R movements, which are just more solid, more precise, and have longer power reserve in some cases. For the professional watches in the Pro Specs line, hence the name, you'll also get things like ISO certification of dive watches, ensuring that whatever dive spec they have is one that you can usually trust. Compared to Western brands, the Seikos here tend to be incredibly solid. The core case is usually really well put together, but you do tend to find better bezels on divers with less play on other brands, as well as often better bracelets and clasps from other brands as well. For some baffling reason, Seiko has just chosen not to keep up with the specs race for bracelets, and it's a big negative for some people. For this range, you're paying somewhere between $500 and $1,000-ish at the high end, although it can vary a little bit from country to country. Finally, there's the highest tier. And here again, you've got King Seiko, Astron, and the Prospex line. Again, this can be super confusing because for some odd reason, our Japanese friends at Seiko just don't feel a need to be consistent with their tiering. But there's a little bit of a cheat sheet for Prospex, and it's this. Usually the mid-tier Prospex models will have a model reference starting with SPB, at least in Europe, where the higher tier models start with SLA or SJE. But more than anything, you'll know it when you handle them. On a mid-tier Prospex SPB model, the bezel will usually be an aluminum insert, where on the higher tier model, it will be a lacquered steel, which comes across similar to the ceramic inserts of Omega, Tudor, or Rolex. The dial is going to have more depth and dimensionality. Plots will be a lot more crisp. The case will be a massive step up, with parts of the case often being Zaratsu polished. Everything just gets that premium treatment, and where the SPB models have good but workhorse movements inside, you'll often find in the high tier extremely capable movements, which are versions of ones you'll find in Grand Seiko models. But Seiko have what I call the there's at least one thing problem, where any given product almost always has a glaring omission, a flaw, or just something where the watch is noticeably inferior to other similarly priced products. Take the mid-tier Seiko SPB 453, which is a reinterpretation of the 62 MAS Classic. It's got a clear, excellently proportioned dial. It's got a polished bevel along the flank of the case, which is Zaratsu polished. It has all the water resistance you want from a dive watch. But at roughly the same price point, I can find brands that have a highly praised bracelet that regularly gets compared to bracelets like the Rolex Oyster bracelet. Those other watches don't have that one flaw. Which brings me to the question, how can a company grow and be so successful when they always have that one problem? In their most recent 6 months result, they demonstrated 8% in growth in their watch business. This at a time where the Swiss are crying about declining consumer interest. Seiko are growing in Japan and globally, and their main growth is with the Seiko 5 line, the Prospex, and the Presage lines. America grew massively. Europe was also a strong growth engine as well. And on top of that, just like the Swiss, they've also gone up market, but they haven't been hit by the same consumer backlash that many Swiss brands have been feeling. It's across the board that they've done well last year, despite their usual clear shortcomings. I've really thought long and hard about why they're doing so well, despite the fact that they almost always have some level of inferiority to parts of their products. And I think as a business, it's down to 3 reasons. One is honesty. Is the movement inside the Hublot Classic Fusion, the HUB 1110, in-house or sourced? It's sourced, but you wouldn't know. Many Western brands will obscure, obfuscate, and outright lie about what they do themselves, where things are made, and what their watches can do. Seiko never lies. And SPB 453 has a stated accuracy of +10 to -15 seconds. Now for some, +10 to -15 seconds might as well mean it's going to tell the time correctly twice a day. And it's the same with that stamped, potentially hollow end link bracelet. This is what you get. Plus, you get drilled lugs so you can get it off easy peasy. There's an incredible integrity to Seiko in terms of specs, materials and finishing. You know it's not perfect, but it gets the job done. Just like the Toyota Hilux, it's got all sorts of shortcomings, but it's just the choice because it gives you exactly what it says on the tin. Second, price, and that has 3 components. Seiko have moved upmarket, but they haven't done it in the same way as the Swiss. When you look at a King Seiko SLA or SJE model, you can spot immediately what you're getting extra compared to a mid-range Presage. Second, they're still a value brand even at their most expensive price point. They're not competing or being compared to Rolex, Omega or Tudor. And in that space, a lot of customers have an automatic assumption that part of the cost of the watch must be the sponsorship of some celebrity. Third part of the price piece, you always have the option to stay with a Seiko regardless of your budget. Rolex doesn't allow that level of flexibility. Third piece is location. Now, I have on occasion found an actual Seiko boutique, but for the most part, you'll find them in mid or low-end jewelers or mall-style watch stores. You're never going to find them at Bucherer or Wempe. Because you're not walking into a velour-clad store with employees wearing silk gloves where your mind instantly concludes that this place must be expensive, you get more of that honest feel to the brand. Their locations signal value and accessibility. And in that little mid-size mall jeweler, the Seiko SLA 063 is one of the best looking watches of all the brands on display. There's no Tudor next to it to make it look inferior. And in this location, the name is the name you know more than any other. Oris might be in that case as well, but they sell maybe 40,000 watches a year compared to Seiko's 5 million. That name just has a draw in that location, just like Rolex has over at Bucherer. Legacy, honesty, price, location. It's 4 things. But just like George Carlin didn't need 10 commandments, he could boil it down to 1. I think I can too. And it's honesty. Seiko advertises and markets just like everybody else. Seiko have celebrities to endorse their products. But for a lot of other brands, those layers are thick and obtrusive. For Seiko, there to me is an underlying integrity. I think it's telling that they to this day still have battery-powered watches. When they innovate, they do it with the goal of getting meaningful product improvements. And apart from a Zaratsu statement here or there, they're not using terms like in-house or anglage or perlage. A lot of you know that I like my burger analogies. And Seiko, they sell you a grilled beef patty, cheese sauce, onions on a toasted bun. The waiter doesn't have a fancy brown leather apron or a goatee. You don't have to wait to get served. It tasted good and you left satisfied with no hole in your belly and no hole in your wallet. And I think that's why they sell 5 million watches a year. Share your thoughts on Seiko in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.